Hi there. Welcome back to Nico Talks Hockey. Today I'm very excited because I get to talk about my favorite team, the Chicago Blackhawks, and they're the next team up in my What's Next series covering every single team, evaluating where they are in the season they just had and what they're going to try and do for next season. So the Chicago Blackhawks, they're a very interesting team to talk about, regardless if you're a fan or not, because they could they've got a very exciting future. Their present, however, especially this season, was very underwhelming, right? Um, they were expected by a lot, including me. I'm going to be upfront about that. They were expected by a lot to be better than they were this season. That maybe they were, not necessarily a playoff team. I think that was maybe a bit of a stretch for some expectations, but maybe closer to where Utah even was this season. So they weren't that. They were the second worst team in the league again. And they've got a lot of work to do. But a lot of that work has been done, kind of not necessarily behind the scenes, but what Kyle Davidson has been building here, and the prospects that are coming up and maturing, and not only coming into the AHL but also the NHL. We saw a little bit of it in the final weeks of the season, and it was incredibly exciting to watch and be witness to, because if it's indicative of the future, it's a great time to be a Chicago Blackhawks fan. So let's look at the record this season. So the record this season was bad. It was 25, 46, and 11 for 61 points. It was an improvement by 9 points from last season, although it was only 2 more wins, with 23, 53, and 6. Only 2 more wins, really, but they got a lot more points from losses in overtime and shootout. And that's really interesting, right? Because let's say you get most of those. Let's say you get 8 more wins. If you just converted those overtime or shootouts into wins, 8 more points gets you to 69. Maybe you get to 70 points, and all of a sudden, maybe the overall outlook and narrative of the Blackhawks as a team is a lot more positive. So, it's something that definitely I think is worth considering. Their GM is Kyle Davidson, someone who I respect immensely. I look up to him, and I really love what he's doing with the team. I love the boldness and the cutting edge just attitude that he brings to this team. I trust him. I trust him a lot with the reins of this team and the direction. He brings in new coach Jeff Blashill, who I made a video on if you want to check that out. I covered what my opinion of the hire is and how it may go against what I think is right now the public perception of the hire. But I think it is a positive one. I really do. He's going to have to prove it. Blashill has to prove it. He has to be the coach that is able to do what the past 4 or 5 coaches have not been able to do. We've had a lot of coaches recently. We've had Luke Richardson. We've had Anders Sorensen. We've had Jeremy Colleton, who, saying his name, I know sends some chills down Blackhawks fans' spines. But we've had a lot of coaches. We had Derek King, who I believe is now gone. I think they've replaced him on the bench. Lots of coaches who they served roles, but were not able to blend developmental abilities, the ability to get young players, ready for the NHL, blend that with on-ice results and success. So here's to hoping that Jeff Blashill can be that guy. On the ice, the top 6, it's got some flaws, right? Donato, unbelievable season. I'm really hoping he stays. We didn't trade him in the deadline. Honestly, personally, I like that we didn't. Unless you got some premier first-round pick, even that, it's not it's not completely because of how much I love Donato, which I do. I really like Donato as a player, and I think that he can have, although I expect him to regress somewhat next season, I don't expect him to regress too much. I think that he's actually changed a bit of how he plays in general. But not trading him, I think, wasn't just about asset management. It was about, I think just trades can be like this sometimes where, you look at it, at why you want to trade someone. Sure, you get the asset or maybe you gain by subtracting, right? But it's also like a locker room thing. You assess how much a player means to a locker room and to the group of guys in there, and you assess what message it sends. And I think that not trading Donato was the right move, even if they could get, maybe a first round pick would have been worth it, but anything less, I absolutely would not have pulled the trigger, because Donato means a lot to the guys. I know that, and I also know that just shipping out people every trade deadline does not send a message of like, oh, we're about to take the next step. You want to send the message right now. I think that Chicago wants to send this message, which is that, we think that we think very highly of the guys we have in our room right now, and we don't think that we've got to ship a bunch of people out in order to get results. So I really hope they can re-sign Donato, but I also am not too critical of not trading him at the deadline. But back to the top six. Bedard, your number one center. I know that there's a lot of criticism of Bedard this season. I don't think that most of it is warranted, in all honesty. I know that maybe a biased take from a Chicago guy, but I truly think that the narratives around Bedard are very silly. Especially, I don't want to drag down Macklin Celebrini in any way. I think he's a fantastic player, and I think that he's going to have an awesome career. This is just the beginning, but they keep comparing Bedard to Celebrini, and for good reason, right? They're back-to-back first-round picks, but what Bedard's been able to do on a team that I would say the Blackhawks are ahead of the Sharks in terms of a rebuild, but also not not in all the areas. Like for offense, I think that the Sharks are ahead of the Hawks because they've got more pieces there. The Hawks, they've got Nazar, but they don't have a ton else in terms of top talent there. Bedard was the first big piece of top talent for offense. So what he's been able to do with last season and now this season, with a bunch of guys who are not going to be here when this rebuild plan is over and they've graduated to playoffs and potentially cup contenders, they're not going to be here. And Bedard's been able to do this with a bunch of replacement level guys, in all honesty. So I think that he absolutely, the narratives around him are not the kindest or the most fair. But I fully expect him to stick at center. I think he'll figure out the face-offs, and I think he'll figure out defense. I think he's gotten better already this season defensively. He was pretty abysmal the first season defensively, but he's worked on that, and I think that maybe that contributed a little bit to why his points weren't as high as he'd probably want them to be this season. So he was figuring out to be more of a complete player. He'll stay as the number one center, and the sky is truly the limit for Connor Bedard. And you've got Mikheyev there. He should not be on the top line. I love Mikheyev. I love what he's been doing this season, but he's a third line guy. So, you need that problem to be fixed. Second line, you've got Bertuzzi, Nazar, and Teravainen. Bertuzzi, he's an interesting guy. And I don't always mean that in a great way. Bertuzzi, when he's on fire, he's hot. And when he's off, he is ice cold, and you wonder why he's on this team. You wonder why he's in the league, because he really can have some really cold stretches. So I think that they signed him to a 4-year deal, 3 or 4 year deal, something like that. I don't think they're going to be looking to trade him right away unless they bring in a ton of help, some real big elite options, and then maybe they pivot and say, okay, well, we don't really need Bertuzzi. Maybe some other team would better fit for him. But yeah, here's hoping that he can have a better season than the one he had this season. Nazar, Nazar is him. Nazar is every day he's looking like he's going to be an absolute staple of the future core of this team. He just crushed it. The U.S. World Champions team. The USA team just won gold for the World Championships. And if I'm not mistaken, was the leading points getter on that team. He's still like 20 years old. Oh my gosh. I was very happy at the time when we drafted him. But I know there was a lot of concerns about his size. He's pretty short. He's 5'9". We'll see if he continues to be the second line center for this team. I personally would hope that he goes in Bedard's wing, and for most of the time. Obviously on the power play they're going to be together, but I love him and Bedard together. When they get in overtime together, you're watching magic. So look, if it's best for the team to stick with second line center, then so be it. But I hope that the Hawks can draft someone who can be there and put Nazar with Bedard. And then Teravainen, he's like Mikheyev. He's probably more suited, at this stage in his career for a third line role. So the Hawks have a lot of holes to fill, right? This is going to be an absolutely, like maybe a career-defining offseason for Kyle Davidson. But it doesn't mean just go into free agency and go wild. We see the free agency class, and I think that most of us can recognize that it's pretty lacking, right? Your number one option is Mitch Marner, and I want to talk about Mitch Marner, but I'll talk about him when we get to the keys to success. But yeah, so going on to defense, you've got Vlasic and Levshunov. The defense is so strong for the future for Chicago. I love what Kyle Davidson has been able to cook up here for the recruits on defense. Vlasic, I'm already in love with. The Pickle Man, number one shutdown defenseman on this team. He's really looking like a future Jalmerson for us. So very, very happy. And he's also like a leader, right? He's a leader in the locker room already. It's just such a young age. So it's really cool to see. Levshunov, I'm so high on Levshunov. I was one of the people who wanted the Hawks to pick him over Demidov. Nothing against Demidov, but Levshunov, I think the sky's the limit. I truly think that he can be a Charlie McAvoy type of player that every team, every cup caliber team needs. And I don't think you can just find that in free agency or even a trade. So you need to draft those kind of players. So very, very happy they went with Levshunov. And yeah, again, I think the sky's the limit for Lev. You've got the Torch, Korchinski. I know that some Hawks fans have soured on him a bit, but I think that's just because he's victim to the "what have you done for me lately" kind of thing, where Rinzel and Levshunov are like kind of the new toys, and Korchinski's probably taking a little bit longer to develop. So everyone's like, okay, well, trade Korch if you're trying to get some immediate help. I think that would be a miss. I think that Korch is absolutely, he can be a future staple to this team, a staple for the defensive core going forward. I think that he's got to mature in the offseason in the sense, like, just physically wise. I think he's got to bulk up. He's got to get stronger, a lot stronger. And he's going to work with a lot of coaches to do that. But I haven't given up on Korch, not at all. But yeah, Rinzel, as I've said, Rinzel, when he came in at the end of the season, he looked like he'd been playing for years already in the NHL. He looks already so good. So I'm very, very excited to see what he can do next season. He might end up, at least for next season, he might surpass Levshunov as the number one go-to guy for the power play. He might be that power play quarterback kind of guy. So very impressed by Rinzel already. Just comes in, no AHL time, comes in out of college, and just looks like someone who's been doing this for a while. So very, very cool to see. In goal, very interesting because you've got Knight now. Spencer Knight is your number one goalie. I love the trade. It was time. It was time for Seth Jones to depart. He made it as clear as he could be that he did not want to be here anymore. And you can't have any players on your team who are not fully bought in. I think Nick Foligno expressed that, our captain. He expressed that, there's some players who hadn't fully bought in, and now they're rid of them. So, you get in Kyle Davidson. I think that he worked wonders with that trade. He gets not only Spencer Knight, but a first-round pick with it to ship out most of that money and to ship out Seth Jones. So, look, I guess I wish Seth Jones the best in Florida, but I'm very happy with Spencer Knight now as our future goalie, number one goalie. It's looking like it's very, very exciting. Soderblom had a fantastic season. What a season Soderblom had, huh? Really insane rebound. I mean, if there, I hope that one day the NHL has a trophy for, they give all these awards out, but I hope there's an award one day for most improved player, because I think Soderblom would get that. Soderblom looked like he didn't belong in the NHL last season. He was like the tank commander, and then comes back this season. And we all thought it was going to be Brossoit, right? Because they bring him on. I'm sure that was the plan. Brossoit gets injured, and it allows Soderblom another shot at it, and he shines. So happy with that for him. I'm very happy for him that he can, he got to show that he's worthy of being in this league. And I hope that he's an RFA now. I hope that we sign him to a contract and he can be our backup goalie. Looking at some stats here, they aren't going to be pretty because of where the team is at currently. Goals for 26th, goals against 31st. I do think it tells a bit of a story. So I think that Luke Richardson ran a very defensive style, and so last season our defensive numbers were better, and our offense numbers were probably the worst in the league. They ship him out pretty early in the season, bring in Anders Sorensen, and he's almost the opposite. He's like, okay, he can get the offense a boost in the arm. He can get it going. That's why it's 26. It's not even 27, 28, 29. Yeah, it's not even like the bottom 5 right in the NHL, which is, it's something, right? But goals against, it's like basically worst, right? So I don't think that Anders Sorensen really has the defense figured out, and I think that's part of the reason why he didn't get the full-time job. You want your head coach to be, you want him or her to be balanced and be able to run both the offense and defense well. So here's to hoping that Jeff Blashill can figure that out a bit, because he's going to have to. And I think that, that's probably why they hired him. I talked about it in the other video, but Jeff Blashill knows how to run a defensive unit and make it very active and very mobile. And so we've got the players that can fit that mold for sure. Our power play percentage, the special teams were very encouraging. Thankfully, the power play percentage, I don't think that the coaches there, for whoever coached that, are out, because it was 7th. It was 7th best in the league, despite us being the 31st best team in the league. Our power play was 7th, converting 24, nearly 25% of the time. That's awesome. It's very cool to see. You need your special teams to be working if you're going to be any type of successful team. So to have that already, that's really, really encouraging. PK is not even as bad as you'd think it would be. It's 14th, which is really good for a team that was, that had the season like the Blackhawks just did, right? So 79.3% of the time they're stopping that opposing team's power play. So special teams, it's definitely a bright spot in an otherwise a bit of a disappointing season. So what's the identity of the Chicago Blackhawks currently? Are they still a rebuilding team? I would say no. I don't think that the Chicago Blackhawks would classify themselves right now. They're still in that rebuild plan, that 5-year plan that Kyle Davidson's talked about before. But they're not trying to tank anymore. I truly believe that they're not going for Gavin McKenna next season. I think that last season, the objective going into this season was that they were not going to be bottom of the barrel anymore. And obviously, the team wasn't there yet. It wasn't ready yet to take that next step. I don't think that they're going to even, prepare for that eventuality again. I think that they're absolutely going to do everything they can to be a team that takes a big jump. Maybe that's not playoffs just yet, but they're going to want to be a team that is no longer in that basement, not in the bottom five anymore, because they have to start improving. They can't be tanking forever. You run the risk of ruining any type of competitive culture in the locker room. You need Bedard to you need to show Connor Bedard and the young core what the promise is. The promise is that this team is going to be successful, and you need to show the fans too, right? You need to show the fans that this isn't going to be some team that just is okay with continuing to be at the bottom of the standings. So yeah, I have their identity as the Ascenders. I think they are going to ascend and start ascending come next season, and no longer be in a squarely rebuild status. So their next season outlook, I have them as in the hunt for a wild card spot. It's no given that they're going to be in there. It's a very competitive division that they're in the Central. You've got nearly every team going for it, right? In that Central division, they're going to be there. It's a lot like the Atlantic. The Central might be the most competitive division in the entire league. So, not making excuses to the Hawks, but it may be a little bold to say they make it, but they absolutely have to try. They've gotta get a lot closer than they have the past two seasons, and they've got to be in the hunt. They, come April, you want people asking, can they make it, right? Their keys to success. How are they going to pull this off? There's so much to do. It can seem quite daunting, but I'm sure Kyle Davidson has a plan. And I think that it starts with figuring out who the second line center is going to be. So I think that was probably their biggest, what would I say? I think that Kyle Davidson was banking on Nazar winning that second line center spot outright in training camp, and he wasn't quite ready yet, so he went to the AHL for a little bit and then came up. But because Davidson was kind of hoping that would happen, he didn't want to block Nazar in case he did win it outright. So he didn't really get anyone in the offseason. He got a lot of additions, right? You got Bertuzzi, Teravainen, you got a lot of additions elsewhere as well. But he did not get a center. And so I think that was probably contributed greatly to the team's problems on the ice. So figure out who your second line center is going to be, is whether that's Frank Nazar. I would like to see him on Bedsy's wing most of the time, but so be it. If he's meant to be at center, regardless of his size, he's awesome, and if he deserves it, then so be it. But if not, if that can be someone, maybe if the Hawks get lucky enough, they get Michael Misa in the draft. He seems to be like the only one who's NHL ready out of all the players here in this upcoming draft. So if Michael Misa, he falls into their laps, or my lips, God's ears, if the Hawks can somehow trade up and grab Michael Misa, they trade up for some reason, that would also be awesome. But let's say that doesn't happen. They probably, if their plan is for Nazar to be more of a wing to on Bedard's line, then maybe you look for free agency. I don't think that they're going to go after the Sam Bennett's and the Brock Nelsons of the free agent market here. I don't know who they go after. I think they're probably going to look for a trade, honestly. I think they go for a trade. They've got lots of picks, lots of prospects that they could, maybe you don't sell out your blue chip prospects, right? But you look for more picks wise, where you don't need all these picks. You've got so many players in the system already now. They've really built up this farm. In my opinion, it's at least a top 3 farm in the whole league. So you need to sell that a little bit of that off for maybe some immediate help. So maybe you trade for someone. I don't know. Maybe you trade for one of the RFAs. You get ahead of the offer sheet and say, look, you got some risk here of being offer sheeted. Why don't you get something for it at least? We can trade. We can work out a trade here and maybe get more better return than you would get with an offer sheet. So I'm sure that Kyle Davidson's thinking about all these alternatives here. The second key to success, I've got is that coaches need to give young core best opportunities to succeed. So originally, I made these keys to success before Jeff Blashill was hired. So I had, like find the proper head coach for the young core going forward. Let's hope that they've done that with Jeff Blashill here. Let's hope he's the guy, because it's imperative. It's imperative that he is able to lead this young core and not block them by giving more minutes to veterans, right? You want to strike a balance. You want to build accountability within the locker room, within your young team. It's something that has to be taught to be accountable, and when you make mistakes that maybe you don't always get ice time, right? But I think that some older head coaches can definitely fall into the trap, even when they're tasked with developing a young team, with just giving all the ice time to older guys just because they don't trust the young guys enough. You have to let these young guys fail so that they can eventually succeed. And it's going to be a monumental task, but I'm hoping that Jeff Blashill and all the assistants he brings in, along with Anders Sorensen, can do this and help the young guys become what I know that they can be. And then lastly, my last key to success is find Bedard elite help on the wing. So a lot of people, even non-Blackhawks fans, have been shouting this for a while, and they're right. Bedard is alone out there right now, except when like Nazar is on his line. He doesn't have a ton of help, so he's not only forced to carry a line on his own, since he's the real only true offensive threat that can be a threat at all times at any point in the game. What's the opposing team's game plan every time they face Chicago? Shut down Bedard, you got a really good chance to win. Shut down Bedard, who else you got to really worry about consistently? So if you can get more elite help on his wing, but also maybe you don't need it all on his wing, maybe you can get on the second line and take some pressure off Bedard, I think he'll thrive. He'll thrive and he'll become that superstar that a lot of us know he can become. And he will take this team to the next level. I truly believe if they hit all these keys that I've highlighted here, and really hone in on this young core going forward, I think the Blackhawks are about to explode. I think that we're about to see kind of like 2008, right before the Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews led team of the Blackhawks back then, right before they really ascended. I'm really excited about where this team's going. I love the young core. I love the defense. I think we're going to get a great player here in this draft, whether that's Misa or anybody. I trust the scouting staff and Kyle Davidson to make the right choice here. But yeah, get Bedsy some help on his wings. Help him, dish it, so for some other people, whether that's Mitch Marner. Thank you. Mitch Marner. Before this video ends, I want to talk about Mitch Marner for a second. Mitch Marner would undoubtedly be an absolute help and be a fantastic help for Bedard on his way to superstardom. However, do you want Mitch Marner to be your guy? Do you want him to be the guy? I think he's better suited for a number 2, number 3 kind of guy. And although you want Bedard to eventually go into that, Marner's probably going to be the guy for at least a year, right? So, and then you get to the playoffs, the playoff struggles. Let's say you sign Mitch Marner to a 7-year contract. I'm sure within those 7 seasons, the Hawks will eventually get to playoffs, at least hopefully, right? And let's say it's same old Mitch Marner in the playoffs that we've come to know. Regular season Mitch Marner is a whole other beast, a whole other animal. In the regular season, he's a top 10 player in the whole league. In the playoffs, I don't know where to rank him because he struggles a lot. And I don't know if you want that to rub off on any of the young core going forward. And you also get to the cap discussion. He's going to get at least 12 million per year on his contract next for next season. He could get up to like 14 million. Not only do I think he's not worth that much money, I also think that when you look at how you break down a team's cap, do you really want some guy you brought in free agency to be the guy who makes the most money in your team, especially a team that's rebuilding? Or do you want, Bedard to be the number one guy who makes the most money? And you want everyone else to have less of that, pie. If you're looking at pieces of, you're looking at cap hits and how much you take of the cap, how much percentage of the cap you take up with your number. You look at like pieces of pie. You want Bedard to be the largest piece. You don't want Mitch Marner to be that largest piece. So I have my qualms about Mitch Marner. If they bring him in, I'm going to be elated. I'm going to be very, very happy. But I also understand that maybe you look in other areas. Maybe you look for a huge trade, a team that may be looking to go into a rebuild that has some players that are still really, really good, that maybe we could trade. We could find a trade there. You could sell off some of those prospects, sell some of those high picks for the coming years, and bring in some immediate elite help, or offer sheets, right? Offer sheets. I could absolutely see this offseason being the summer of offer sheets. Matthew Nyes is there. I imagine he stays in Toronto because of how much they value him there. But you've got other people: JJ Peterka, Mason McTavish. There's a lot of players that are up for grabs, so to speak. So yeah, lots of ways to bring in help. But that's my assessment of the Chicago Blackhawks. I've wanted to make this video for a long time. I've wanted to assess where they're at because I wanted to give my 2 cents on it. There's a lot of narratives. Chicago's a very popular team. They're also a team that's easy to hate. I get it, but so a lot of times I think that the Hawks are villains to a lot of people, but they're my heroes. So here's to hoping that the Hawks ascend the standings by a great margin this coming season. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be continuing this What's Next series on each team in the NHL with more videos to come, and I'll see you guys in the next video.